So I just have two questions to you. One is like we have been talking too much about the role of technical institutions, and but there is another aspect to it, that is about the employability of these graduates, because year after year the studies are saying that hardly 5 to 6% of them are employable. That actually raises the question on the method that we use in the institute, or the what you call it, in the college. And so how would you like to comment on that? How can we improve the employability ratio?
That's what I said already. I touched upon that already, saying that, like, we'll look at when I think we probably have to get a little bit more data. I know this because a lot of, yeah, I know, I've heard this from many industries because we have regular industry conclave, and I have heard this from many people. In fact, I asked in one of the first conclave which we did. I asked the industry colleagues who had come to our institute, like, what do they expect from IIT students? What skills they. So the answer I got was very interesting, and the answer I got from them was that, we from IIT students, we just expect them to just think and do things on their own, right? Okay. And so we don't need to provide, you just provide them the very strong base. So that is what our undergraduate curriculum is always about. We put a strong base on everything, on the topic, and then so that they can learn things on their own. So one of the main things of being employable is that, they should have the learning skill, and we should nurture that during the what they learned is not very important. They should have a learning skill, okay? And that that is one important thing to focus on. And but that is one part of it. That is in the hands of the technical education institutions or higher education institutions. I would say higher education institutions focus on that part. But the other part, on what I said about soft skills, is a serious problem. It is a serious problem, and it is something which we really face. Many students have difficulty; they cannot even write their CV, and so, this is a very serious problem, and I think it should start from. And if you look at students abroad, okay, when you work abroad, you see that, I have worked abroad as a student, as a PhD student. Okay, I spent time and I've interacted with fellow PhD students, and I've in there. Okay, and I found that, their writing skills are much better than mine, and you know, even though my English was better than that, because I was, for example, I was spending some time in Germany and some time in Italy, and both them, and especially in Italy, their English was not so very good at the student level, but their writing skills, their technical writing skills were much better. They could present it much more because that has been developed much earlier. So that is something which we don't do. Okay, and having written assignment submission, for example, in schools. Okay, and our focus, our schools tend to, I would not say everybody, but many schools tend to focus on how the border is put, and how it's designed and things like that, and then what format the content is organized, right? So, these are the issues which you should address in the school level itself. And very few kids read these things. Very few kids read, and so their language skills are very poor. So this is, and so these are the issues, major issues in employability. In fact, we have been talking about it, and we have been talking to some, industry, and also to some of the IIT alumni, etc., to have a program for students to go through this, go through a kind of training on industry, to get them industry ready. So that is one aspect. But as I said, if you put that on the higher education institutions, then institutions head, and they also prepare them on soft skills, it becomes, students get burdened. So I think we should focus on this early, and we should kind of convey this message very clearly. Actually, NEP talks about that, okay, having a broad thing again, okay, in the school level. But it's one to have all these policies. Okay, other is completely another thing to implement it. Okay, it is not a question of, actually resources. It's also, maybe part of the thing is resources, but part of the thing is actually our mentality. That has to change. That will take some time, but hopefully it will change. Yeah.
My next question to you would be on the role of IIT Palakkad, because Palakkad being a very small place, okay, and we had our own, like everybody had their own apprehensions when like it was said that IIT is coming up in Palakkad, or even for that matter, IIM is coming. IIM is in Kozhikode, okay. But my question to you would be: is there a like when you talk about Kerala, like Kerala has now got two esteemed institutes, one being IIT and one being IIM. So is there a scope for higher education institutions like IIT Palakkad to tie up with institutions like IIM Kozhikode, or we have got some of the best medical colleges, some of the best arts colleges, and give a thrust to the cross-functional path-breaking research, or coming out with some unique model which other states may not have taken up?
Yes, yeah, that is, in fact, you asked this question at the correct time because we are very much interested in that. In connection with our inauguration, we have had some videos out, and in those videos I mentioned exactly the same thing, that, this third generation IITs, as we call it, this, we are part of this third generation IITs, are set up in small towns, okay, and that is an advantage. That's an advantage because it allows us to connect with the rural population. Okay, even though in Kerala we do not call it as really rural population in small towns, but in Palakkad is the best rural thing you can get in Kerala. It's the most rural of all the other districts, and so it gives us an advantage to connect with that population and to understand their issues and then work on some of these issues which they have. Right? We actually started a program called Public Lecture, which we actually hold in Palakkad town. Unfortunately, after the first two lectures, pandemic came, so we couldn't do it further. But we wanted to do this in Palakkad town, have the public coming for these lectures, so that we get questions. We get questioned on what we do, and we also get the problem statements from these people. And so we are really trying to connect in that way. And there is also Government of India platforms, for such interactions also. Unnat Bharat Abhiyan is one of them. Okay, which we are a regional coordinator for that. We coordinate 5 districts, activities in 5 districts, okay, in the north of Kerala. So we are connected through that. So that is one thing. And so another thing which we now setting up, it's actually in the final stage, we hope to launch it in another couple of months, is to have a innovation incubation center, uh, which is participatory. In the sense, like, so IIT Palakkad is going to host it, but it will have participating institutes, okay, which are, it could be private, public, anything, okay. So we kind of have some people who are doing some good research, okay, and people who are interested, they can become not participating, actually partnering institutions with us. Okay, so we are trying, we are setting that up. See, we are almost in the advanced stages, and we have been in contact with many annual alumni of, for example, NSS College Palakkad, and many industries around, etc. And there are a lot of interest in this. So we are trying to set that up. So we think this is one platform through which we can interact with other institutions. The advantage of Palakkad is that we are close to Coimbatore. Okay, so we have a lot of institutions there also. Okay, there are a lot of good medical colleges. Okay, so we are actually very much interested in interacting with medical colleges. We actually have already an interaction with Manipal, for example. Okay, and so we want to have anybody who is interested in research and any technical help should be able to come, and then and have a region where there is kind of an equal partnership. Okay? We don't want it to be say that okay, we are providing something. No, we are doing something together. That's what we want to do. Okay, so we will be very careful with that. So we are even the structural level we have put in, where these partnering institutions can come so that they be part of the decision making itself for this body. So we are setting that up. Okay? It will be kind of a incubation hub, okay? And which will partner with all of these institutions. So absolutely, we want to do this. Okay, our vision is to in general raise the level of human capital here, right, and also the level of education, technical education in the whole region. So we are definitely doing this, and you will hear about this by the end of the year.
Thank you very much, sir. Nice to know the initiatives that IIT Palakkad is taking and the major role that is going to play in the future. Thank you very much, Sunil Kumar, sir, for coming on this platform. And we are extremely privileged to host you here. And we know that it's a very busy schedule for you. So we'll continue with the other speakers. Thank you very much, sir, Sunil Kumar, sir. Thank you.
Please let me sign off.
Yeah, thank you very much. So our next speaker is Dr. Suresh Ramanathan, Dean, Great Lakes Institute of Management. Dr. Ramanathan is the Dean and Principal as well. And prior to joining Great Lakes, Dr. Suresh was an Associate Professor of Marketing at the prestigious University of Chicago Booth School of Business, and later Professor of Marketing for close to 8 years at the Mays Business School at Texas A&M University, holding the David R. Norcom Endowed Professorship. Suresh sir joined the world of academia in 1997 after spending 10 years in industry in India, and he received his PhD from New York University's Stern School of Business in 2002. He's a BTech in Chemical Engineering from IIT Delhi and an MBA from the Indian Institute of Management, Calcutta. Prior to joining the PhD program at Stern, Professor Suresh worked with Brooke Bond, that is now Unilever, in their tea and coffee business for 3 years, and then moved the world of media and advertising, where he worked with JWT, Lintas, MTV, McCann Erickson for 7 years. So we are very indeed privileged to have Dr. Suresh Ramanathan on this particular platform. Over to you, Dr. Suresh.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I really want to thank the organizers, MaxEd and Times of India, for this opportunity to engage with an audience on a topic which is, I think, very, very dear to my heart, which is, about empowering students in a world that is increasingly becoming more and more volatile, particularly given everything that is happening. It's a sobering thought to think about how things were 1 year ago and how things have changed in just the last 1 year. And as I pause to think about some of these challenges that have been brought about by all these developments, you can see how businesses themselves are actually scrambling to change their business models. They're scrambling to try and come up with different ways to manage their supply chain, about ways to handle information, about ways to HR practices, and so on and so forth. So you can see that in general, there is a huge change in the mindset of organizations and in industry. And so therefore, it is very topical to think about how these changes can actually be potentially addressed, not simply by industry alone, but by this confluence between industry and academia. And therefore, this session is very topical, given these kinds of developments that have happened today. So if businesses are facing these kinds of challenges, I think it is also important to think about how business schools, or in general schools of higher education, or even more generally, how education as a whole needs to transform itself to cope with everything that is being thrown our way today, right? So there was a time, till last year, there were certain things that we were used to. There were certain practices that we were used to, and in just 1 year, everything has been appended, and therefore, the assumptions that we made about life, the assumptions that we made about the realities of our environment, the realities of about our education, everything needs to be questioned. And if schools of higher education are not questioning their own models of education, who will? I think that is something that we all need to start thinking about. And so therefore, what I would like to present is an argument for what I call big ideas. Big ideas are not the domain of industry alone. Big ideas come when industry and academia partner with each other in thinking about how to solve the most vexatious problems that are being faced by society today. The biggest ideas have actually emerged as a result of public funded research, particularly in the US. And I've spent about 22 years in the US and have been part of the entire research ecosystem there. And I would like to underscore the importance of research in in driving innovation in this country, in driving a completely different mindset in this country. Why is research so important? Think about all the big ideas that emerged in the last, let's say, 50 years to 100 years. The computer, the internet, GPS, even laser scanners that you use in a store, they all emerged because of academic research. Back in 1945, a person by the name of Vannevar Bush presented to President Harry Truman a paper called Science, the Endless Frontier. And in it, he outlined the importance of research. And that actually led to the establishment of the National Science Foundation, the National Institute of Health, and the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency called DARPA. DARPA was the creator of the internet. Long before you and I have started using the internet, long before the World Wide Web was created, all of that, way back in the 60s, 50s or 60s, DARPA was actually pioneering the development of the internet. And so academic research is extremely important because quite often it serves as a precursor to what eventually gets developed and picked up by industry. So therefore, we need to think about what is the ecosystem that we have in India for research. What kind of an ecosystem? And that ecosystem is not merely in terms of the funding that we provide. I'm all credit to the government for recognizing the importance of research and innovation in the new education policy. Fantastic to see the establishment of a national research foundation, very much along the lines of the National Science Foundation in the US. So the National Research Foundation is going to have a corpus of about 20,000 crores, which is about 0.1% of the GDP as far as I can understand. A lot still remains to be done. In terms of GDP allocation towards research and innovation, China is probably giving about 2.2%. The US is also upwards of 2%. Japan, you name it, almost every country is, every developed country is allocating roughly about 2% towards research and innovation. And we have historically been lagging on this dimension. In the past, we had about 0.7% being allocated towards research and innovation. I'm gratified by the fact that the government has recognized this, and as Professor Sunil Kumar talked about, this importance of multidisciplinary work. Professor Nageshwar Rao was also talking about it. Multidisciplinary work is extremely important because that is really what fosters the sense of creativity and looking at the problem from different angles. So that is very, very important. But beyond resources is an ecosystem that actually recognizes the precursors of what I would call a research mentality. And a research mentality is not simply about publishing papers or about publishing white papers. A research mentality comes very, very early on. And so therefore, to Mr. Kuruvilla, Mr. Kuruvilla, what I would really urge is, how do we assess people, not simply in terms of their skills, but also in terms of their ability to think in an abstract fashion. And I think that is very, very important. As a skill, we are very, very good in terms of testing to exams. We are very good at memorizing and testing knowledge. Are we really so good at creating our own knowledge? Are we? And in order to actually develop that mindset of creating knowledge, it has to come very early on. I am completely with Professor Sunil Kumar when he said that this onus of creating knowledge, of soft skills and employability, that really doesn't come only at the higher education level. It has to come from very early on. I'll give you one simple example of this. So my daughter, was educated in the US. She went to high school in the US, and in high school, she had, so this is in 10th standard, she had a class on history. And in her class on history, she was presented, they had a discussion on one particular civilization. Okay, so I don't remember which one it was, but let's assume it was the Indus Valley civilization. Okay. And unlike the way we normally teach Indus Valley civilization, and we just give them facts in terms of, factoids about the Indus Valley civilization, what she went through was actually 2 or 3 different perspectives on the Indus Valley civilization presented by 2 or 3 different scholars, research scholars, who had actually studied the Indus Valley civilization in depth. And her task was to actually look at all 3 views, synthesize some kind of a common understanding of what these different contradictory views might mean and how you can reconcile them. That requires advanced thinking. It requires integrative skills. It requires abstract kind of skills. And we don't teach abstract skills in this country. We simply don't. I grew up through the system. I went through the IITs and the IIMs and through school. We just don't teach it. We don't. So if it is there, if it is part of an innate ability to think in an abstract fashion, great. But we don't inculcate it because we teach to exams. And that, to me, is a fundamental flaw in the educational system in this country. If we were to develop an ecosystem to have people, to have our students think in an abstract fashion, to be able to synthesize, integrate facts, to resolve contradictions, we would be far, far better off in terms of what we can create in India. And so therefore, if we had those ingredients in place, I would therefore dare say that we would actually have a thriving research-oriented culture, which is at the forefront of innovation in this country. Today, the crying need for this economy, for India, is really an ability to think and an ability to innovate. We are talking about, incubation centers, and we are talking about setting up all kinds of facilities to basically foster the spirit of innovation. But where does innovation emerge? Innovation ideas don't come from just like, they don't come randomly. They have to come from a way of questioning status quo. That, the entrepreneurship and the idea of innovation comes when you basically challenge what is the status quo, what is normal and what is currently being done. And you say that, no, there should be a better way of doing things. And if we are not developing that kind of a mindset early on, I would say that, we are only scratching the surface in terms of the true potential of this country. And therefore, what we need to do is to foster that spirit of inquiry, foster that spirit of questioning, critical thinking, challenging established truths. And when we do that, I can safely say that we will be at the forefront. We have the intellectual capital in this country. We're simply not nurturing it enough. We're not developing it enough at the grassroots level that we can create this sense that everybody can actually potentially be innovators. And if we can do that, and if we can increase the number of innovators in this country, why should we be borrowing knowledge from other countries and simply regurgitating it in the classroom? Why are we taking theories that are developed in the West and not even questioning them and applying them to an Indian context? Why are we simply disseminating knowledge rather than creating knowledge? why aren't we partnering with industry to solve the most vexatious problems that industry is facing? And why isn't industry coming to academia to an increasing extent so that we can actually solve those problems that industry currently is not able to solve? Why is there such a gap between industry and academia? These are some of the questions to which I don't have answers. And I hope that the panelists here and the audience at large will raise these questions and have this kind of a dialogue that we can all initiate together in this country so that we can solve these problems. So I'd like to thank you for this opportunity, and I hope this provides some recipe for some spirited debate. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Suresh, and you have set the tone for the research. Okay, so and we will be coming back to when we have a panel discussion. So I reserve my questions for that. Now over to Mr. Eldo Kuruvilla. Mr. Eldo Kuruvilla is the founder of Vedatma, and with a BA honors degree in economics from St. Stephen's College in Delhi and an MBA from Griffith University in Australia. He went on to become a serial entrepreneur. He has worked with big companies like Arthur Andersen, that's now Ernst & Young, and Oracle in Bangalore. And he is an angel investor supporting budding entrepreneurs in the startup ecosystem. And Mr. Eldo has always been a people's person, and his passion for bringing out people's potential and his realization of the need to guide students in their ideal career path has led him to establish Vedatma in 2017. So over to you, Eldo, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Vineet. Thank you for the introduction. Good morning to all the panelists, and good morning to all the audience listening in. It's a great topic when you talk about, we didn't stop at education, we said education and empowerment. So, in what I want to convey in the next 10 to 15 minutes is talking about at least 3 aspects when I want to touch upon that broad topic of education and empowerment. The first topic kind of relates to what we do, as a company, Vedatma do. See, when you talk about empowerment, what is actually empowerment? The most broadest way you can put empowerment is, yes, surely, professional satisfaction, right? That's a form of empowerment. But equally important, I would say, is personal satisfaction. So it's professional satisfaction and personal satisfaction in the broadest term, what you would call empowerment. And that is where I think our company Vedatma comes in. Any career counseling company would come in, not only us. There are a lot of such companies around in India. So what do we do actually? See, Vedatma stands for self-knowledge. So when I say self-knowledge, it is very important to understand what we are all about. So it's before you start chasing your college degree and the lure of all the management institutes or the IITs, take a step back and figure out, okay, what are you all about? What is your inspiration? What is your nature? What is your vision to accomplish in this life? So these are big questions which needs to be answered. I think Professor Sunil Kumar kind of touched upon it, because that's the first thing he said. People should understand what they're about, as one of the most important things he said, right? So this is the journey that we help students understand themselves better. When I say understand themselves, we have a model, there are different models of understanding yourself, but one of the ways you can understand yourself is trying to understand certain aspects of yourself, like your aptitude, your interest, and mostly ignored one, your personality, right? So aptitude, there's umpteen number of aptitude testing going on around, right? I think when I was in college, and probably when most of these panelists were in college, it was all about aptitude testing, right? I mean, you would figure out what you're fit in because you take a test, okay, mathematical ability, probably go for engineering. But yeah, aptitude is important, but equally important is things like personality, because it's a thing that we don't realize, but we are all different. That's for sure. We have our different characteristics and our different nature. And there's been a lot of research done over many, many years. And this is very well accepted in choosing career streams and degrees abroad, that you kind of match that to the kind of person you are. So a lot of research done on personality match and careers, because the way you function, you have certain way you function as a person. So it's very simple, very intuitive to understand when I say this, that it's very difficult being somebody else in a job throughout your life, right? You rather do something in life which you can be yourself, right? It should naturally come to you, because when it comes to you naturally, then obviously it would lead you to that empowerment. Because how does that lead you to empowerment? Because that second thing I talked about, it's not about professional satisfaction alone. Most important underlying one is personal satisfaction. So if you get into a job where you can be yourself all the time, well, that's great, because that's a starting point of empowerment. So I want to move on to the second point I want to make, and I think it's important that we mention that. I think again, uh, Dr. Suresh and Professor Sunil Kumar did mention that the owners of developing behavioral skills in schools, right? And I think when you talk about education and empowerment, I think that's absolutely important. Now, I have a reason for saying this. See, we know there's a lot of talk about, artificial intelligence, machine learning, intelligent automation. All these are going to drastically change our lives. We have to be aware of that. See, there's two thoughts on it. Like it'll bring in more jobs, or it could make a lot of jobs redundant. Whichever way it is, whatever argument it is, one thing we know for sure, it's going to drastically change the workspace altogether. So as we go forward, let's say 20 years down the line, because we are talking to an audience which, they're looking at careers, probably 20 years down would be a good time frame for me to talk about this. There are a lot of careers, as we know, it will drastically change. More and more automation will come in, more and more things, skills needed in that job will get automated. And it's our behavioral skills that would be valued, our human capital. And that is why behavioral skills is important. Because as AI, machine learning, all that becomes realities of our workspace, you have to reflect upon what is it that makes us human, right? And this is where that human capital, behavioral skills. So when I talk about behavioral skills, probably, a lot of academics talk about this 4 C's now. Now, what are the 4 C's? It's critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and creativity. So these are the behavioral skills that would be valued, and these should be inculcated in the, in school itself. We have to start thinking about how we can inculcate these kind of skills, behavioral skills in school itself. I have a reason for saying this, because I've got twins. They are in the 7th standard. And, with the lockdown and them being in the house, there are a lot of, when you look at online education in India, EdTech and all this stuff, there's so many things going on in coding, analytics, there's so many companies in that space now, skills development, Baiju's, there's so many companies. But really, when you really start digging in deeper, how many of them are actually looking at behavioral skills? How many of those EdTech companies are really getting into that? There's a huge gap persistent in our society, where there is a huge opportunity also for coming in and filling in that gap for behavioral skills. And this is important because technical skills, and I think again, Professor Sunil Kumar really did mention, all the research says today, it is not the technical skills people are lacking in, it is the soft skills. Lot of research has highlighted that. And technical skills, even if you learn it in a professional degree, it is going to be changing, as automation will keep changing these technical skills. We have to kind of discard the technical skills we have learned, pick up new technical skills that the new automation will bring in. So as we keep doing this process of learning, relearning, a continuous process of learning these technical skills, it is our behavioral skills that we should always focus on. And I hope that there'll be a lot more changes in our educational system where this is highlighted. lot of edtech companies which concentrates on this rather than technical stuff. So that's the second one I wanted to touch upon. The last one I wanted to touch upon is the lack of vocational training in India. And I think we all know this. And I think Dr. Suresh did mention about this, that it's too theoretical. What we learn today is too fact-based and theoretical. And that is our problem in education. Yes, NEP, the new NEP is really trying to change that by even at least a vision statement saying that 50% of learners in schools should go through a vocational training. Absolutely spot on. But yeah, again, there's a vision statement, and what can we put into practice is something else. And let's hope that it becomes a reality. Even in professional colleges, a lot more needs to be done on campus placements in terms of learning in between what the skills that they learn, put that into practice. Because this whole thing of obsession about in India about this degree courses and how vocational training with your ITIs and all being a completely different stream altogether. It's not integrated into our educational system. It is looked upon something as a social stigma or an inferior thing, which needs to change. Vocational training should be imbibed into our educational system altogether from schools itself. And it's a very promising thing that NEP tries to address that. I think these are the broad things I wanted to talk about education and how it can lead to empowerment in India as a whole. Thank you.